Alrighty. Here we are. Moon Knight Required Reading MCU. Apparently, Moon Knight drops midnight tonight. But I'm not sure why people stay up so late just to watch like 40 minutes or something and then be like, oh my God, why did I just watch this? And they go to bed and whatever. I'd rather just sit down tomorrow, eat a sandwich, have a Diet Coke ready to go, and I can just enjoy it and just be awake. Be awake when you enjoy things, people. I don't get you. Anyway, I'm very curious what everyone else thinks about this, but I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out. But I'm really excited today because we've got an exciting show. We're going to talk Moon Knight comics. I'm going to talk a little bit of my history of the character here, but of course I'm not alone. I always try to bring other people with me because it's so much fun to do that. I am joined by usually my good friend Chris Clow, but today we've got Nico, Mr. Nico. What's going on, man?
Dude, thrilled to be here. Honored to be here. We've interacted on Twitter a lot. I've went to war with you on Twitter once before. So I feel like it's great to talk on the show. And I'm glad you brought me on for this because I am so not familiar with this character. So not only was it a treat to read, it's going to be a treat to hear y'all talk about him, especially your history of the character as well. So I'm just along for the ride today, and I couldn't be more thrilled.
Well, I'm excited because, believe it or not, what we read today was actually, to be honest, a big part of my history with the character. So I'll just tease with that. I think Chris, you probably already know the story, but anyway, if you don't, we'll find out. Anyway, so today we're gonna be talking about Moon Knight. Obviously tonight at midnight or tomorrow, if you're like me who wants to be sensible and an adult about it, and make sure you enjoy it when you watch it. Moon Knight Disney Plus series comes out. Very exciting. Everyone I know is excited about it. Oscar Isaac, big movie star, TV star, whatever you want. I'm not sure what you want to call it now, but it's as interesting because Moon Knight has a little bit of a weird, not say weird past, but an interesting past, if you will. And I don't know what they're doing with the character. He's evolved so much. And with what's really interesting about this character, and I'm curious what you guys think, especially you, Chris, you know a little bit more about the character, sounds like, than Nico, is unlike other superheroes, he's actually been able to evolve a little bit, I would say, over the years, especially in my own personal research of knowing the character. Usually when a hero gets defined, they stay that way for pretty much, and tweaks here or there, but it doesn't really change very much. Moon Knight's not necessarily that way. He really has been the one, like I'd say, super mainstream superhero or mainstream big two hero who's actually, I would say, evolved more than any other character, maybe ever, characteristically, in my opinion. Again, I'm not sure if we all would agree that here, or maybe other hardcore Moon Knight fans, or throw things at me, but hear me out. But anyway, I'll get to my things about the character here in a second. But Chris, what's your history with the Moon Knight character?
It's pretty limited. Really, the first time that I willfully exposed myself to Moon Knight was when he became part of the Secret Avengers. That was really the first time that I started paying attention to him. I mean, I've heard, like any comic book fan over the years, that there are more than a few passing similarities to Batman, but I don't know. There's
overrated similarities. I don't get it.
I mean, they're really kind of superficial, it seems to me.
Yeah, exactly.
In the sense that they both kind of, beat the crap out of criminals at night, and they have they wear capes and cowls and have some pretty deeply seated emotional issues that they're trying to work out. That's really kind of the extent of the comparisons, at least in the stories that I've absorbed.
Yeah,
I haven't really absorbed a ton of early Moon Knight stories, except for maybe some pretty basic stuff while I was working in a comic book store. But other than that, this series, I think I read this series up to I can't remember which issue Huston.
It was like 30. Well, he only so what we read today, for those who don't know, we read the 2006 Moon Knight series, and that was written by Charlie Huston, whatever I say his name. Again, those who know me know I can't pronounce anyone's name, so don't even try even basic names. Smith, I'll probably say that. Yeah, we have an SLP here, so be nice, Nico. All right, I don't want
Dude, I'm always nice. I promise.
You're probably laughing when I say things. And you're probably like, "Oh my God, dude."
I'm not that.
No, I know you're good. I know you are. You're good, dude. You're good. No, but what happened was Charlie Huston, David Finch is the artist. Now that's the big thing here is David Finch's name. That I'll stress that a lot. Is David Finch was a big deal when he came on this book. He was just coming right off of New Avengers, and that run with Bendis. And really, and that book was huge, and that book was gigantic. It was a blockbuster. I think we could talked about it back in the day, Chris, as something like a Michael Bay, and that's not a detriment or knock on it. It was very much a blockbuster like kind of thing. What happened with him and Bendis were on the book, and it was good. I mean, I love New Avengers. Their run was great. I thought it was fantastic. It is very unique. He doesn't get enough credit for being a very unique book, especially for an Avengers title, in my opinion. So, but Finch was, I think, the bigger name. Obviously, Houston's a crime novelist, I believe. And again, I don't read novels, so I don't know what the hell's going on there. But
was it?
Anyway.
No Man's Land.
No.
Find time.
No.
You can find time for it.
Anyway. So when that happened, I knew the character a little bit. Okay, Moon Knight had showed up in the West Coast Avengers for a while. I had a couple comics with him in it. I always thought he looked great. My brother had a couple random issues of not the Mensch and Sienkiewicz stuff, but I think, well, technically I guess it would be Mensch and Sienkiewicz. It was like the miniseries after the ongoing series in the late 80s. Anyway, but in the 90s, this series happened, and I didn't read this series very often, but I read an issue here or there. This is the Mark Spector Moon Knight series that came out in the 90s. This is written by Chuck Dixon. This is very interesting. If you don't know who Chuck Dixon is, you don't read DC Comics, obviously. But anyway, no, he wrote Moon Knight for a while. Very interesting. I read a few issues. It's very 90s, very, very early 90s. We'll get into this in a second, but this went on for about 40, 50 issues, and it lasted a long time, but it's vastly different than what Doug mentioned Bill Sienkiewicz did. And we'll talk about what everyone did leading up to this here in a second. But he then disappeared after this, couple miniseries, and then was out of the stratosphere. Then you fast forward to this. This is what we read today. The Charlie Huston, David Finch series. We read the first 6 issues, so issues 1 through 6. He went on. We were talking a minute there, Chris. He went on, I think, for only 10 or 11 issues. It wasn't even a full year. He jumped off, and the title was just kind of after that because this became tied with Civil War, Dark Reign, all yada yada yada.
But apparently, he advised on subsequent issues even when he wasn't writing for them, which is kind of unusual. You don't hear about a showrunner outside of maybe a weekly book that has a team of writers that rotate around it. But I thought that was, but I mean, I thought that was kind of interesting, just considering that Moon Knight, I don't know if you could necessarily characterize him as an A-list or top tier Marvel character, at least,
not yet.
What happens after this week. But yeah, I mean, the fact that there was kind of a team approach to the creative on the book is unique. The character is.
Yeah. So really quickly, I'm Nico. I'm really curious about what, if any history of you with this character you have. And again, I love this because I'll get into my reason why I picked this here in a second because it is tied with my history with the character a little bit. But before you haven't read this, have you read anything with him in it? I think you may have said in the beginning. Have you read anything with the character in it?
The only thing, and it's so funny that you shared about what this run turned into, is I think the only other time I've physically seen him, because I've read a decent amount of Marvel comics, but I'm more of a DC guy, except Spider-Man's my number one, Little Avengers, but mainly it's DC stuff. That's just the house I'm raised in, as you see all this Batman stuff behind me. But he ties into Civil War, and I did read Civil War at the time. That was one of the first comic books I actually went to a shop and got with my dad. I was 11 or 12 when that came out, and
making me feel old. Wow.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. All good. It's all good, man.
And I forget if he crossed over. Spider-Man's in the issue.
Yep.
So I think I either got that one or there was an allusion to it because there's the couple Spider-Man tie-ins, and then there's I think he's in a couple issues of the Civil War main title. I haven't read that in a long time.
It's been a minute, yeah.
But that's probably the only other time I've seen it. and my dad has a figure of him. But my dad hasn't read a lot, but we're completionists, so he needed to get every Marvel character
I was too.
all the time, right?
Right.
He's got a figure over there. It's somewhere in there. And that's all I know. And my new history with him is the trailer for the show.
Yeah.
Whatever my good friend Chris Evans, who's in the comments here, is a big fan. Whatever he's told me, which I don't even remember because there's words I don't understand and gods that I didn't understand until I read this thing.
Okay.
And then it was really when I sat down to read this. So I've been a Moon Knight stan for about 48 hours.
Nice. No, it's exciting. This is exciting. This is why I love doing the show, because I want to bring people on who are like you, Nico, like who haven't read the character or read the comics, and we can, we have people like me or in Chris who are, have read a ton of this stuff or maybe off and on, and then get our perspectives all together and see, so if someone's like you, like, where should I go for Moon Knight? They have maybe a starting point. Again, I try to pick something for a reason. Really quickly, I'll try again. I'm never brief, and I'm trying to keep this as brief as I can here. I'll promise. Really quickly, I grew up, like the character, a couple comics here and there. I'd be remiss to not bring up the Round Robin, the Sidekick's Revenge, the Amazing Spider-Man series, to or not even crossover. This the storyline in the mid or early '90s, where it's about Moon Knight. It's literally about Moon Knight and his sidekick character, and Spider-Man and Darkhawk and Punisher and Nova. It's ridiculous. And again, if you want to know why Moon Knight would be the focus of a Spider-Man title for 6 issues, it's because Danny Figueroa, oh my God, I forgot his last name. He wrote Darkhawk. I'm so bad with names. He was the editor and the writer of Darkhawk. And he also was the editor for Spider-Man for many, many, many years. And he pretty much needed to find a way to tie up that loose end. So he brought in and asked for them to do the storyline and that's where my main that's where my comparison of Moon Knight with Batman came, because he had a sidekick that went bad or whatever. I went, oh, he had a sidekick. He was like Batman, and I just kind of forgot about it. Okay,
well, and also too, I mean, in terms of like getting people to understand that Moon Knight kind of operates just on a fundamentally different level than Batman. There was one moment, I think it was like a blink and you miss it moment that Moon Knight had in Avengers versus X-Men, where well, no, but look, that story, we could debate all day long about that story, but in terms of just this single moment, Moon Knight had teamed up with a couple of Avengers and was fighting a smaller group of X-Men, and Rogue was one of the X-Men that he was facing off against. And there was a moment where Rogue grabbed Moon Knight by the skin, and she absorbed like the details of the fact that he operates with different personalities, and it like neutralized her for a little while because she couldn't take how crazy Moon Knight.
I remember that now. You're right. I remember that. Oh man, it's been a minute.
I mean, she wouldn't get that with Bruce Wayne. I mean, it's just he's. If anything, it just kind of helps to emphasize, well, yeah, so he only gets this blink and you miss it moment in this giant Marvel crossover, so that kind of tells you where he was at the pecking order 10 years ago, but he's working with, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Well, no, he's just like, there's so many different kinds of tools that are only in the toolbox that wrenches are supposed to be in, but he just throws everything in there and a rubber chicken occasionally. And he's
okay.
all over the place.
So really quickly, I want to get into the story, but I want to tell people. So leading up to all this, I've always liked the character. I got back into comic books right around New Avengers when I came out. I was the first trade that came out. I got hooked on that, and then that was right before Civil War. Civil War happened, and I became a full-blown Marvel zombie overnight. Like I was done. I was just tapping my toe in it a little bit, and then I was picking up every half the Marvel titles at that point, and I haven't really looked back since. But what's fascinating is I like David Finch a lot. His art I always loved his art, and when I heard that he was doing Moon Knight, I was like, oh, cool, okay, that's really awesome. I love Moon Knight. I've always liked. I love the character because I liked the costume, a couple issues here or there. I liked them, right? And I knew a little bit about the character from this main series. Now, this main series, I want to stress, I did not know he had a multiple personality or any kind of anything like that. Okay, I had no idea. I thought he was, because this is called, if you look up here, it says Mark Spector. Okay, this is not saying anything. And I when I read the comic books, it was pretty much just Mark Spector. That's it. It was not trying to do anything else. Because in the previous titles, in the original Doug Mensch and Bill Sienkiewicz run, they emphasized the idea of him doing different personalities. Not crazy, but he'd do different personalities to like mingle, and it's confusing. But anyway, they made it very simple. And it was just Mark Spector. So that's all I knew him to be. Fast forward to the series we're reading. I picked up this issue. And I'm like, cool, David Finch, right? I'm expecting action. I'm expecting whatever. Yeah, that's not what we got. It was, and I was like, what the hell did I just read? And I gotta tell you, it was a first foray into the character of Moon Knight, and I was like, oh, this is not what I was expecting. And I was blown away of how much like they went with the crazy aspect. And again, maybe I haven't read I've only read a good chunk of the Munch and Sienkiewicz run, but I'm pretty sure this is the series that really emphasizes the sickness, and I want to say sickness, the disability, I should say, of the character. Before, it just kind of was like, it was more teased at, like Sienkiewicz Mitch would basically say like, oh, I don't know who I am anymore, Marlene, and Marlene would be like, oh my God, Steven, I love you, I need you back, you don't want you to be Jake Locke anymore. It was just stuff like that. This series is where I think they really emphasize the idea is Mark Spector actually crazy? And then as we get later on in the comics, which I'll do a required reading for after Moon Knight, I assume, we can get into that, which is amazing. But this, I think, is a great jumping on point for every new Moon Knight reader. I know everyone's going to say go Ellis, which I will say, go Lemire. Yes, that stuff's incredible. But honestly, if you want a good idea about the character and a real good introduction of the history and kind of mold both those things together, this is it. And Nico, I want to get your take on this, man. Tell me what was your take reading this for the first time, and like, yeah, throw it all at me. What you think?
So my take is, first of all, and I'm going to comment on what you just brought up, because I definitely felt like there's like a payoff to the is he crazy thing. And I was reading this going, oh, is this the first time they really went harder into it? Because I was reading this and it feels like it's told in a way where you don't like know that. Whereas other comics today, they try to like show you the things you already know about the character and then just roll with it. But this is much more of this mystery that unfolds. And I am saying that because I had to read this twice. But my first takeaway, and I think you guys will love this. This might be one of the hardest things I've ever read, and not hard as in difficult. I mean like hardcore, especially because of that Finch art. It's so that so good. Issue ends and where it's revealed he's fallen, and I swiped out of it and went, oh. that was a journey, and that was the first issue. But man, that was hardcore. Talk about like adrenalized, and then the rest of it doesn't really like not calms down because it's still really intense. But it does this great job of both giving you his history and also trying to play a game with you. At least that's how I felt as a reader. It wasn't until I finished it and then said, okay, I want to read that again, when I was going back a second time, going, wait. Some of this might be unreliable. Or, is it really just he's crazy? And that's the point of these first six, right? And the way they used is it Kashnu? How do I say
it's again, I'm the last person. Yeah. I believe it's Khonshu. I believe it's
okay.
Yeah.
So I totally spelled it wrong in my notes.
It's all good. It's all good.
And I thought that was brilliant, the way it played with him, especially how it tied it back to when he killed
Bushman?
It Bushman? Yeah. That was gnarly, and just the ripped off face. I mean, like Joker, like Endgame vibes from that with like the cut off face and everything. So my biggest takeaway before we get into some specifics is it was really cool, and it did get me hooked on the character because
awesome.
It didn't necessarily, and I want to try to articulate this in the best way. It didn't make me choose between feeling like he was good or bad.
Yes.
Just let him exist.
Exactly.
And I have such a fascination with gray characters, and that's why I love a lot of indie movies. Like, I love things that are ambiguous and are like, we're not telling you how to feel about anything. You're just gonna walk through these 6 issues, and we're gonna lay everything out. And it's truly unlike a character I've read before, where we're not sympathizing him because of the multiple personalities. It's just there, and you're reading it going, well, are these actions justified? Do I feel bad for the life he's been a killer? You know, do I understand why his relationships failed? Do I even want him to be resurrected? And also, I haven't read a lot of Taskmaster before.
We'll get into him in a minute, but continue.
I was reading that going like, all right, this is interesting dialogue they're giving this homie.
Yeah, I'll address that. I'll address that. Okay,
cool. Once again, not
on that.
But to kind of bring it full circle, is it hooked me on the character. It was super intense. It was super high concept, which I like. I love when I have to like feel like I have to write a thesis about something after I read it. And it didn't. The thing I appreciate the most, which I think too many comic books default to, at least today, is I feel like it didn't say feel this way about the character. It just said, here's this guy who's got a lot going on, and this is where he's at now, and just deal with it. And we'll see where you go mentally after that. So thankful for this recommendation, but boy, it was a roller. It was a roller. It was a heavy metal roller.
Oh man, I get to be pumped. No, and before I jump into you, Chris, I want to just comment a couple things that Nico said. First of all, you're taking everything away. I think why I picked this, because it is a great introduction to the ideas of the character, because you're getting also a lot of the supporting cast, which a lot of people, a lot of writers have kind of neglected. And and it's just, again, because there's a lot. There's like 8. It feels like there's 8 supporting characters from the, as I'm reading the Sienkiewicz run, mentioned Sienkiewicz run. There's so many characters, and it's interesting because there is an interesting premise there that they introduced, that there's so many, they kind of neglect a lot of them here too, but they still do a lot here and show you that there is a strong supporting cast for the character. But you hit on everything that I think Huston does, but like none of that really exists before. I mean, it's hinted at, but it's never really explored or really given much credence. And one thing I want, and again, I try to keep spoiler free as possible, and we can. No big deal if we do a couple of things here, because I think it's worth reading because it is a really great education of the character. But what's fascinating is that he didn't even touch on the multiple personalities as far as the 3 identities, right? Like that comes later, which we'll get to that, and I'll talk about a little bit later maybe. But this is pretty much just establishing, is Mark Spector crazy? Like that was really fascinating to me, because that felt fresh, and that still was fresh. And I don't think that's the first time I think we get. I love how you said that, like, you don't really know if he's good or bad. Like, and I didn't think about that, because I went in thinking, oh, he's a hero, right? Like even now, I read it, I'm like, oh, he's a superhero. And as I think about it after reading it now and what you just said, I'm like, you're right. Like, you don't really know, is he actually doing it for the right reasons or not? It's interesting. I'm like, oh yeah, good point. I didn't think about that. So great points, man. We'll come back. But Chris, what was your take on reading this for the first time in a while? I know you read it a long time ago, it sounds like, but rereading it, what was your take?
I was pretty pleased with just the general aesthetic. I think that's the first place to start, because David Finch's style really informs a lot of how you feel about the story when you read it. And he has a more severe edge in this than I think is typical of his other superhero work.
I agree.
And I mean, that's down to the writing. Huston is clearly writing this with an eye. Like if this came out today, well, actually, considering that this came out like in the mid 2000s thereabouts, I'm almost kind of surprised that this isn't a Marvel Knights book. Maybe it needed to come out a few years earlier.
Before, yeah, it was. Knights, I think, was just ending at that point because, if I'm not mistaken, I think Bendis took over, or excuse me, Brubaker took over for Bendis right around this time frame. It was like pretty
You mean
close.
for Daredevil?
And yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like for Daredevil, and I'm positive Knights was gone by that point.
Yeah, because when Brubaker started at 82, and the Knights
Yeah,
label was not on his first issue.
not even close. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Still trying to find the McNiven variant of that. I can't find it anywhere. It's frustrating. But yeah, I mean this does feel like it feels like a Marvel Knights book. And that's a good thing, you know. I mean, certain characters that seem well suited to this kind of harder edge superhero storytelling, you know, obviously Frank Castle is in there, Matt Murdock is certainly in there, and I think Moon Knight, especially with the way that this story was told, is in there. I was kind of surprised at how sympathetic I was for Bushman in the fight, just because the brutality was so high. But you know,
You need to read the first issue of David mentioned Sienkiewicz's Moon Knight run, bro. That guy's he's not nice. You don't feel sorry for him. He's
but
ruthless.
I mean, it didn't have anything to do with that. It was just that Moon Knight was coming at him so hard.
Well, there's a reason. But anyway,
yeah, sure. Well, of course. I mean, there's always a reason. But
I think I'm not saying a legitimate reason, but I mean,
yeah,
somewhat justifiable. I think on Moon Knight's end, in my opinion, he did kill him after all. I mean.
Right? Yeah. Honestly, though, like the vibe that I get from the character after reading all of this is that his mind is not nearly as much of a factor in the overall story as I thought it would have been. Like the only real well, yeah, I mean, look, I don't feel sympathy for Bushman as a character in general. Just in this moment, the fact that a fight ended with his face getting ripped off, it was like, wow, I don't remember that from the first time I read it. That's all. Like, I'm not like, oh, Bushman,
dude, really?
No,
that's okay. Maybe because I love the character so much, and I love the comics. That was the one thing I remember vividly, was because that was because he obviously Bushman, he shows up.
Yeah, but when I first read this, I had no idea who any of these characters were. So I just I didn't have any concept. So it probably just didn't stick out as much in my mind. But either way, I mean, the fact that his general mindset doesn't have quite as much to do with this story overall, except for informing like his backstory, was a little bit surprising to me. The only thing that there is for him to overcome, at least on the mental front, is the fact that he is down, right? I mean, it's in the title of the story, the bottom. He has fallen, and he's fallen hard, and he's longing for what he used to be when we read the first issue. But it's almost like his instability that has always been kind of a cornerstone of the stories, at least as I understand them, was not quite as much of an important factor here as it would be later. Certainly, like with Bendis, you know, obviously that became kind of it was a different take, and he incorporated more recognizable characters into it, but it was just kind of its own thing. But overall, you know, coming to the end of this story, honestly, the Taskmaster characterization I was not a fan of. Just because he didn't seem like, I've always associated cold and calculating with Taskmaster, and he was a little bit too humorous for my liking. I think he works best when he's seen as that calculating force that always seems to have a contingency for everything until a particularly extreme circumstance befalls him. But I mean, it doesn't really impact the enjoyment of the story in terms of the overall way that the story lands. It's a good story. It doesn't really make me feel an abundance of sympathy for Mark Spector himself, because it seems like he's rather willfully pushing the closest people to him away in a manner that he doesn't need to. And it makes it kind of hard. I don't know. It makes it kind of hard, at least for me, to totally get behind him. That doesn't lessen the impact or the kinetic way that he moves through the story, because he's a very active presence in a lot of different ways, and he has certain things that he has to overcome, and you want him to achieve that sense of former glory that he feels he's lost. But he doesn't make it easy, especially when his partner for so many years is opening himself up in such a way that, you know, he's presenting a great deal of vulnerability. Just because you didn't pick up on it doesn't make that his fault, you know? Like, I understand if he feels like he's been lied to, but I had a hard time. And when what's her name? Why can't I think of her name? The
Marlene.
Marlene, yeah. When she comes to him later and she says, "You think it's a coincidence that he ends up in the hospital the same day that he reconnects with you?" It's like,
I like Marlene. She's cool.
She feels very justified in feeling, and honestly, like, she has more of a reason to be dismissive of him, especially considering the history, right? But she clearly felt something for him at one point. And I like that, at least with this story, it leaves her with a sense of like, you're not in my future. I'm happy with where I'm at. You know, it doesn't need to involve you. I hope you find what you're looking for, but that doesn't necessarily need to include me. And I found that refreshing, especially for the time in which this book was written. So all in all, just like as a character study, Khonshu is certainly a bastard. You know, like it's pretty easy to get that impression from him.
Is it Khonshu though?
Well, I mean, I don't remember what happened.
No, but that's the thing, and that's what you're kind of picking up on too, Nico. Is that, like, I think that's the beauty of this run is you just don't. It doesn't tell you. It's ambiguous. It does not tell you one way or another.
Well, at least from the perspective of Mark, it seems like he believes that it is. So
well,
his word for it.
And that's
Nico, go ahead.
And that's what makes it interesting, though, because the first time I read it, I'm like, so I'm always, and maybe this is because I study communication for a living, but it's like, I'm like, this God is talking to him in a very a very personable way. And then I'm like, okay, that's a cool characterization of a God being like, oh, it can conform to the time and the person it's talking to, right? When you think of a God, you think it's all knowing, all powerful. But then the second time through, I'm like, or is this like what he's projecting it to be, which is why, just to make a brief connection to a version of this that I think was done brilliantly in something, and I think it went over a lot of people's heads. And if you guys didn't like this, that's totally fine. There's an episode of Titans, if you guys watch Titans, in season 2, when Ian Glenn's Bruce Wayne he's not physically there. He's haunting Dick Grayson in a way. He's haunting Dick Grayson, and he's very out of character. Very out of character, to which a lot of people were like, that's not Bruce Wayne. He wouldn't see or do that. But what I interpret the episode was doing was showing you how Dick is perceiving him and having Bruce talk to him in a way that's really, he's pretty much beating himself up the episode. So it's him talking to himself in his way, but it's through Bruce. So the second time I read this is when I was like, okay, wait, is it him or is this Mark? And he's projecting, and it's almost like the guilt and the regret and the self-pity and self-deprecation that's coming through the best way he could understand it. Because, you know, a God might, you regret your ways, young mortal, but no, it's like, you're the saddest piece of S I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, oh, and I say that to myself.
That is a totally fair interpretation, and it's very possible that that's what the authorial intent was. One of the problems / benefits of the medium in general is that, you know, we have new people come in with new takes. That's what I was interpreting from this. Since my perspective of this is that Huston innovated a fair amount of new details into Mark Spector's origin story with this run. So because not only is this a new first issue, a new volume, but it's also the beginning of a pretty
reestablishing
new take and reestablishing the concept of the mythos, and recharacterizing a lot of the relationships we'd seen before. I guess I let it slide more, and maybe I just wasn't being as active a reader as I could be. But
no,
because of that, I just kind of assumed.
No, you got it.
maybe that's why Charlie Huston has always imagined the interactions between Spectre and Khonshu to be. So,
but that's cool about what you're saying, which I love seeing it all these different ways, because what you're saying about it too is that it could also be like the way at the start we said how the Moon Knight character has evolved. Well, it's cool that he kind of evolved what Khonshu
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly,
your point of view is just as interesting, because it's like kind of what I talked about at the start. Is it's this new version and a modernization of what this god can be, and it doesn't have to stay in the language and mannerisms it was historically. It can adapt itself to how our world is now. So that way is just as hella interesting to me as it being in Mark's head too, because it's different. Like it's different. It's not. Yeah,
absolutely. And Moon Knight, I think, as a character, occupies, at least at this point in time, a mid-tier level, so that his continuity probably isn't as solid as, say, Captain America's or Spider-Man's. So when Huston comes in with a new volume, he's able to remix things a little bit in a way that makes sense for the story that he's telling. But Paul, considering your familiarity with where this volume falls into his history, is this a pretty I don't know, is this a pretty generous reorientation of the mythos for the character at this point?
I would. Well, what's interesting is, before I answer that, Doug Mensch Charlie Huston, when he was brought on, he apparently tried to get Doug Mensch to collaborate with him on this. He's a huge fan of the series before, and I've been, and it's been nice because I've been trying to refamiliarize. I can't see I need SLP, man. I can't say things anymore. I never could, but I try to get refamiliar with these stories, and it's interesting because the Mensch and Sienkiewicz run is so brilliant, but part of its brilliance is that it's all one shot, one and done issues. There's maybe like a two-parters, but you're basically just getting like this fun, weird, wacky stories. And they're bonkers, and they look incredible because Sienkiewicz is a legend. But what's interesting is that he's taken a lot of Mensch's stuff that he kind of like just puts little pieces here, or maybe things that maybe he thought I could touch back on later, and just kind of really puts it out there. And the idea that there's actually a great issue where Bushman takes the statue of Khonshu, and Mark freaks out and goes, "Oh, he's my power." Like he's, it gets weirder and more convoluted at that point. But he basically, is like, I am nothing without Khonshu. He is the reason I live. And Marlene's like, no, you're more than that. And then she shows up with like, oh, look, actually, I have the real Khonshu statue, but it's not. And then it's anyway. I say all that because in his mind, he's like, like I didn't need the cut. That's not the real statue. He says, no, it got destroyed. He goes, oh, well, I guess I didn't need the statue after all. And it's a point of the story. And what's fascinating is that in this whole story is that he has a statue and he's like, I need this. And when it gets destroyed later on, it's crazy. So what I think, looking back at this then and then to now, I do think is a reimagining a little bit, but it's also just building off of what happened before. It definitely, just like anything with Marvel continuity, especially, they don't. I mean, this is not a jab at DC, but they didn't reboot the whole universe multiple times, so there is that sliding timeline where it's like, Punisher went from Vietnam to Gulf War to it just keeps going on and on and on. Same thing with this. Like Mark's history, you have to kind of alter it a little bit to make it make sense, but the roots and all those things are still there. He still fights with Bushman and Frenchie. They're still out there, being mercenaries. Bushman's still the one that kills Mark Spector, and then it's still, we think, and we're led to believe, Khonshu's the one that resurrects him there. That's all here in this story, and I think it does a great job of explaining to you without beating you over the head and still progressing things, and I think honestly evolving the character. Because I will say, one thing rereading this, one thing I really appreciate now, even more so, I kind of thought Huston's run wasn't that great in the past. It was fine, but reading this now, I'm like, actually, no, it's pretty damn good, because he's the one that establishes that something's wrong with Mark, potentially, or is it, or is he really haunted by Khonshu? And and for those who don't know, and I'm not going to try to spoil it, that's a theme throughout this whole series. And then it gets rebooted, and it's Dark Reign, it gets all confusing, and then Bendis and Malieve take over, and they reboot the series, and they bring in the three personality thing, and that's a whole different story. And then Warren Ellis comes on, and that's when he basically takes on everything and mushes it all together, and things get really interesting. And then Brian Wood comes on and makes it shit, and then you have to get him off. Colin Bunn comes on, and I don't remember Colin Bunn stuff, to be honest. And that's like whatever. But this is what I always tell people: Warren Ellis, Jeff Lemire. That's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything between there. Just read those two series back to back. They fit perfectly, and they're incredible. But basically, Warren Ellis is the one that really escalates the God idea. And is Mark really insane? He brings that whole idea back into it without going. He does, but it's not the emphasis. The emphasis of his 6 issues, and then Lemire takes that and goes completely runs away with it. Those are some amazing. Lemire's Moon Knight run, I've said, is some of the best Marvel comics written in the last 15, 20 years, in my opinion. Wow. It's incredible. Yeah, so I say that, I think this is a great starting point, because I think you do need to have this as a reference point to understand where Mark is, because like I said, in the original Mensch and Sienkiewicz run, it's tease. It's not really an emphasis. It's just you kind of know something's off with Mark, but it's not really the main story. It's just whatever. And then obviously when Dixon comes on and does this story and this run, it pretty much ignores everything. Idea of the whole 3 personality thing or idea is thrown out the window. It's not until when Bendis comes on, which Bendis won't get any credit for it, but really is, in my opinion, I think he's the one that brings in that, really emphasizes that 3 personality perspective. But Houston's the one that brings in, it really challenges the reader. And like Nico, I really honestly really respect and I love your take on this, man, because you got what he was putting down, and really makes me really appreciate even more so what he was doing, because he really emphasizes and really challenges the reader. I think the word challenges you as a reader to really, is Mark insane? Is he really truly the avatar of Khonshu? And that's a really interesting perspective to have on a character that's supposed to be a hero. And that also, through the series, it really rechannels Moon Knight into like, all the heroes were uneasy with him before, and now they really run with that as the series goes on and all the comics going forward. So, I'm rereading this. There's one glaring problem, or there's 2 kind of glaring problems with the series, which I think are totally not a problem, because everything else is so good. Especially the art. Really quickly, the art, and you guys, yeah. Look at this. Just the storytelling of this is just. I love this. This is the comic medium at going. Yeah. Go ahead, Nico.
This part alone went. When I said it went hard, this part goes so, like, who said that you could go this hard in a comic book, and they did.
In Marvel, dude, in Marvel at this time, and they were kind of not stunts, but like they were definitely trying different things. Marvel, it's comics; they always use stunts, but
but this was the part that would have made it a Knight's book, basically.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Like, it's not even just the fact that it happened. Like, look at the way that it's colored too. Like, look at the emphasis that is being placed on the blood, and look at the emphasis that's being placed on the crescent knife. Like, there's clearly, like, the footsteps are punctuating the suspense of the scene, right? But you're drawn to blood and you're drawn to the knife, and both of those things are going to collide in a new way in the next page. And it's just like that's a pretty intense pace at which to go, and you definitely feel it. And just like the blood on his teeth, and the fact that he's like getting it in his mouth, and like on that last part with his mouth open in the bottom left-hand corner of the page, it's almost like he's drinking it too. And it's just like,
he takes a bite at Mark later.
he's smiling in the very first one, like up I'm not pointing correctly, but he's smiling up in the very first one with the
I know
blood
what
on
you
his
mean.
lips, and it's just like, this is going for different vibe. This isn't New Avengers, this is something entirely different that feels at home
No.
next to the other knights, like the Punisher, like Daredevil, or Blade, even, like it's up there.
Yeah. And I want to stress this, that like it's this series of problems. I mean, Finch is just incredible, and he draws beautiful, beautiful pictures, right? Like, look at this. And this is going to take over the whole screen, but this thing itself, when it eventually shows up here, come on now, come on. Hold on, this thing is taking forever. Come on.
It's up on
There we go.
Oh,
that's Taskmaster, but that's still, look at this. Look how amazing. There we go. Sorry, might have a lag, I think. Look at this. That's incredible. And this too right here. This is the next Moon Knight here.
Yeah, this is when he was really.
Look at that.
Like, this is almost like a tryout for when he would have Batman later, because clearly the visual iconography between the characters are similar, even if the substance of them is very different. But like, this is very much like, I don't know. I kind of wish that we had a more substantive Finch Daredevil tenure as well. But.
Oh God, that'd be amazing. That'd be incredible. That'd be amazing. He draws beautiful pictures, and they are incredible. Covers, etc. He's a solid storyteller too. I want to make that very clear. Like, when usually this is like very Image '90s inspired stuff, which I love. I'm not trying to dog on anything. I love Image art. The stories obviously are a little bit, to be desired, I think, but the art is so good. But the one thing with a lot of those Image guys, not all of them, but some of them, is that they weren't always the greatest storytellers. They just drew like beautiful pictures, and that was it. Finch is a solid storyteller, man, and I think this book really emphasized that for me. I always loved New Avengers, but the stuff he did on here I thought was really, really, really impressive. And this one right here is a great example of this artistic license that he had. That's not just boring, just like really 3 panels. This is really interesting, like intricate stuff that he's trying to do here, and I want to give him all the credit in the world for that. So before as we're getting close to here, wrap up, we'll talk about some elephants in the room here. The big one would be Taskmaster. We'll say that for the last. But one thing I want to say, the biggest criticism that I think Huston didn't do a great job of, and I'm curious what you guys think, not having as much history with the character, was, did they establish well enough for you guys who the committee was? Because when I read this, I'm like, he is not explaining who these guys are at all.
I was relying on my reread and the summaries at the beginning.
Okay.
And I literally copy and pasted when it says the dark sons of the men who once paid his wages. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, okay, cool. All right, sick. And then I just kept going. Yeah, because that was the one part where I almost had to flip back a couple of times to be like,
yeah,
who are these people? Why is that guy on oxygen? Like, I'm like,
why are they hiring Taskmaster? Like, why?
Why him? And they're like, oh my gosh, did you just do contingency T? I'm like, they have all the way to T. Like, what's up? It's like in Austin Powers when they go to
Preparation H.
Preparation H. Yeah, I'm like, came out of nowhere. So I agree with you there. So those actually were my 2 as well. Is and we'll get into Taskmaster, but
yeah, we'll get into in a second.
How did you feel about the whole new committee thing? Were you as in the dark as I was? Like,
yeah, I was. I mean, because I certainly, I think I've alluded to the idea at this point that my familiarity, but this is also like this. I think a lot of people, even maybe initiated Moon Knight fans, would have been lost by this point too, because like introducing components like Spectre and Bushman fighting in, I think, the Gulf War, like that's new. Like that wasn't a component of the origin before this story, as far as I know. Even though like a lot of the peripheral
sliding, sliding timeline,
floating timeline, as a comic, of comics. But no, I mean, we got the information. Like reading this month to month would have been rough for people with our level of familiarity with it, I think, Nico. But like beyond that, if you are the hardcore Moon Knight fan who've been waiting for a new #1 for a long time, and you're finally getting into this new volume, maybe it wouldn't have been as lost. But he was also introducing like the Profile was an entirely new character. I think his first appearance was in like #2 of this series, and I don't know how often he's been used beyond that. I kind of got the
glasses.
Yeah.
Ugh, I was gonna look it up. Like, who is this guy? I thought he was already. Wow, I didn't know he was first appeared there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how often he's been used since then.
I don't remember.
Like, I had to look him up, and even like I don't even think they do a good job of calling him Profile. Like,
they don't. I had no idea what his name.
They don't call him
I
that. I
think it's in like throwaway dialogue where they're like, "So did you get enough profile on him?"
God!
And then like now I'm like, "Oh, Mr. Houston there went, huh? That's his name." But I literally searched this and was scrolling, and then finally like one person's like review said like the character in the glasses whose name is Profile, if you didn't know. And then like I Googled him because that's all I was trying to find. I was trying to like not read his opinion. I'm just like, does anyone know who this guy is and what is his actual power? Because he keeps telling you he can't see the future. I know he can see how they react, but I'm like, is that like a luck thing, kind of like Domino, or is this like an actual like thing that he got, right?
I thought he was a mutant. I got the implication.
Well,
he looks like one with like the black hair and the sunglasses.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Apparently, he did show up like as late as #23 in this volume, and then he showed up during Dark Reign to help the Hood specifically against Moon Knight.
Love the Hood.
And then he showed up in Shadowland, and it sounds like that's it.
Yeah. And he probably died in Shadowland like everything else did because that title sucked.
It doesn't look like he died. It turns out the second avatar of Khonshu that's helping Profile is actually Moon Knight's brother, Randall Spectre.
All right.
This is the Shadowland Moon Knight like 2-issue miniseries. So I doubt anybody's gonna read that anyway.
Well, no, because I think Randall is kind of a hot button topic right now. To be honest, let's leave it at that. Well, I'll explain later. I want people to think about that. I'll get that in a second. I'll tell you after they're done with their show. There's a reason.
Now I'm confused, but all right.
But no, it has to do with the show, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So no. Forget what he just said. Because he could be wrong. I have no idea, or I could be wrong.
Hold on a second. Do you really expect an MCU? This is just a general question. Do you really expect the MCU to adapt Shadowland?
No. I'll explain.
Anything having to do with or
if I want to burn it, if I want to burn it away from existence, probably, and they'd be right to because it's terrible.
And this is someone who loves Andy Diggle, by the way. Andy
Diggle. I agree. I don't want to get into all of this. Well, I could go on for a long time about Shadowland.
What's happening with the hand right now? What's happening with the hand right now?
Okay. Anyway, last thing we'll again, Nico, thank you for staying on. We're wrapping up here. I appreciate it, man. This has been amazing. So really quickly, you guys all brought up something about this character, Taskmaster, and I'm just gonna say really quick here, and I'll throw it to you guys here in a second. But I had read the character here or there, and growing up, I always knew he was a little bit of a smartass. Liked that about the character. Always liked the design's incredible. I mean, I'm going to show off here for a minute. This is the first appearance of Taskmaster, and George Perez's freaking design is unreal. This is amazing. Anyway, I was stoked because when I heard he was a villain, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, I like Taskmaster, and when he showed up, I'm like, something doesn't seem right about this. It just didn't. And I remember. I like this. I think these 6 issues are solid, and I think Finch's Taskmaster looks incredible, but it just never really seemed to hit very well. And when I read later on, Houston admitted like years later that he misused the character, and I remember going, "Huh." I remember not loving the character, but I wonder, how misused he was. Well, we're reading this. Holy shit, that is bad. Holy moly. Like I was reading this dialogue, and again, I'm not trying to act like I'm an amateur at best with writing dialogue and anything comic related. So make this very clear, I suck. But I was reading this and went, wow, that I can tell you right now, that is some of the worst characterization of Taskmaster. Taskmaster would not have went out like that at all. And he literally went and whimpered. I mean, he was like, "Oh, don't hurt me, Mr. Moon Knight." I went, "Wait, hold on, Taskmaster? No way." So just how I was like, "Oh, you promised me a clean kill." I went, "What? That doesn't make any sense." So there was a lot of weird Taskmaster stuff here that I was like, eh. And the committee, for those who don't know, basically they're if any kind of hint at it in the comic, but they don't do a very good job of it. They're basically like the origin of Moon Knight, quote unquote, but not really if you read the Mensch run, but whatever. It's tied with his first appearance of Werewolf by Night, but that's it. So anyway, Taskmaster's terrible in this. So if you never read Taskmaster, do not think this is the character, because that's not him. And if you want a great representation of the character, I like to think he's a little bit cowardly. Don't be wrong, he's a little bit there. Read Jed McKay's recent miniseries, which is fantastic, and he does a great job of a great characterization of the character of Taskmaster. But Chris, Taskmaster, go.
Yeah, I didn't care for this application of Taskmaster. I think I basically laid out my reasons for not being too big of a fan of this version of him. I mean, I always see Taskmaster as best when he's cold and calculating, and I mean his abilities always make him exceedingly sure of himself, whether he should be or not. And that was, I guess, technically present here, but just in such a whimsically sardonic kind of way, it just rubbed me the wrong way. It didn't seem to me like Taskmaster himself was taking Spectre seriously, and maybe
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Maybe Huston thought that, since this is a quote unquote lower tier book, even if you have an A-list artist like David Finch on it, maybe he thought he had more creative license to do something different with Taskmaster at the time. But either way, I mean, yeah, I was not a fan of this application of Taskmaster. I thought it was probably the weakest component of the story.
I would 1000% agree. Nico, go, man.
Yeah, well said, Chris. And I'm with you when you said you're more used to him being that cold and calculated. In everything I read with him, and going back to the Spider-Man video game on PS4, that's what I'm used to with him. And I was reading this, and I'm like, it's like I didn't the first time through. It's not that I thought it was bad. I was just like, it was so jarring.
Yes.
And even though I don't know him, like even tonally in the story, like even though Khonshu's pretty vulgar and screwing with Mark towards the end, it was done in more of, I think, a tasteful way that was like it just felt better. And there's sometimes it's just like a feel thing. And the Taskmaster dialogue and interactions, I'm like, this does feel off. It reminded me, because I always try to think like, okay, where have I felt this before? And sometimes that doesn't come up, and that's fine, but sometimes it does. Felt like a little bit of a watered down version of like Negan from the Walking Dead comics, like how he was kind of like more vulgar and a little bit more cocky and a little bit more like, I'm gonna kill you and your girlfriend, and MFer, and I was kind of like, I'm like, this is weird. Especially, I mean, not that this was not necessarily an accurate portrayal either, but even just like the recency bias, like going back to like the Black Widow movie, I'm like, oh, this is not even like remotely, at least that movie like really tried to show you
it went a different direction, like a
completely different direction, and at least try to show you the skill set and the suit and everything. And in this, I feel like that's in dialogue, like I can anticipate you, but it was more of like
you're well said,
like cocky comic relief, to the point where I'm like,
because they don't really have a fight. That's my main problem. I think that's when I was reading it. It felt like they were building up to that. And I thought, and still, Taskmaster and Moon Knight would be a really good matchup, because the unpredictability of Moon Knight, and he may not be able to anticipate with three different personalities. again, see, as a writer, I'm like, dude, there's so much great stuff you can do with this, and there's like 2 panels, and it's literally Moon Knight flying in again. Spoiler alert! Oh my god!
But more than like his coming in is treated like such a big moment, right? And then
yeah,
it's not followed up on in a substantive way, because you're absolutely right, Paul. I mean, how is Taskmaster supposed to employ his most practical skill in the battlefield if that you have 3 different personalities that are competing for Moon Knight's attention, or if he's calling on all 3 of them at once to take this guy on? Then Moon Knight is potentially more threatening than any of the Avengers in a direct one-on-one confrontation.
To be fair, sorry.
Maybe Thor.
Yeah, well, that's not really fair.
Right?
But, yeah.
But like Captain America is consistent in the way that he fights.
And those, and I'm not sure if you remember this, Chris, but who trained U.S. Agent for the Shield was Taskmaster. So I mean, which is again, I wish they could have had that in Winter Soldier movie or show. But anyway, I will. The one thing I would say with the 3 personalities is that wasn't emphasized at that point, so that wouldn't at that point you really couldn't go that way. But now, I mean, oh my god, the story writes itself, in my opinion. But even then, his loose, you could have emphasized the idea of he's crazy, right? Which is obviously what Houston was doing the whole time. So anyway, again, those are I would say those are nitpicks, because Finch's art makes up for, I think, the lack of characterization, because it's so good. And so you're like, it makes you go, I wish that would have lasted longer. But yeah, Moon Knight looks fucking awesome. I mean, like, that's basically what I would say. Some of the weird, like, some of the committee was not fleshed out, but I think I think we all in agreement, it seems like, and you stop me if I'm wrong, we all would say all the character stuff between the supporting cast was really interesting. Obviously, Khonshu is part of that. The Khonshu stuff is fascinating. I think the storytelling's all great. All that stuff is why you want to read this book. It's a great educational piece for Moon Knight. Would you all agree with that?
Completely. Can I bring up one thing?
Please.
It's not a bad thing. It's just funny because you brought up something earlier that I've seen before, and this is the only Moon Knight I have too. So I chuckled when you said something earlier, but just tell me how you guys feel, just to show the audience where I'm at. Having just seen that beautiful piece of cinema 5 times from a few weeks ago, known as The Batman.
Yes, true.
The amount of use of vengeance.
Yes.
Look, I went, and I still can't. This thing is another story. There is none in the Chicagoland area, and I'm very depressed about it. So I'm frustrated now, even more so than I was before. No, I'm kidding. But like, I'm with you. Like, the more I read it, I'm like, it's just really easy to say he's like a Batman ripoff, the same way I get frustrated with people who said the Aquaman film was like a ripoff of Black Panther, because I get it. You could say that on such a surface, but with things that were actually happening, it's totally different. But with this, it was only because of the use of that word like so many times, and it's just the recency bias thing of like the concept of vengeance. If you guys haven't seen the Batman, I'm sorry, but like, you all have.
That's true.
Is such a theme in itself, the word and the meaning in the film, that like reading it like a bunch of different times, including him wearing a costume, holding his cape, going vengeance. I'm
vengeance. Yeah, I know. It's like, Matt Reeves, what were you reading?
I said, come on now.
Nico, did you go up to Village Crossing in Skokie? Did you go up there?
No, I haven't.
Oh no, here we go.
That was my old stomping ground when
There we go.
Really?
It's a long story. We got to wrap up. We're at an hour.
We'll talk.
No, this has been great. No, Nico, man, we're gonna be having you on.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, we're gonna have you on soon again, man. Like, I've been really blessed with meeting, like, one thing about the comic page I've been really happy with is that I want to get more people on from the show, and I'm meeting so many different people and getting the chance to talk to someone like you, Jim from, wrote Butcher Queen, who I've become a buddy of mine. I love that guy to death. Just random people like them, just you and like other people. It's like, I've just really been blessed getting to know and having great conversations. I mean, like, legitimately rad conversations. Like, this is phenomenal, honestly.
It was so great. You guys are the bomb. You guys are the best. And I want to echo what you said. There's something about this community, this comic book community, that's so cool. Everyone's so cool. I've met some amazing people. I could add you guys to that list now. And there's something talking about Zeddy. That's a co-host of mine right there. Shout out to the Vigilante 1939 and Dad, who's watching too somewhere.
Hello, Dad.
It's just such a good community, and it's funny. Just the movie community is different, as we know.
Yes,
TV shows, as we know. But when it comes to the core comic book stuff, this stuff, man, it's there's no better community in my humble opinion, man.
No, it really is. Thank you, Chris, and we'll get you on too, man. We'll talk some more Moon now. I'll get Nico on here, and we'll have some fun. We'll do a big Moon Knight kick, and yes. And so again, thank you so much again for coming on. I'll get you back on, and for those who don't know, every Tuesday is now going to be the new pretty much a new stream of different kinds of episodes, depending on how I feel, what Chris wants. We'll figure it out. So we'll have multiple different guests, rotating people in and out, having fun. So yeah, Nico, we'll get you on, and we'll do some Batman stuff. Gotham Knight, we'll get you on there. Lots of great, obviously Spider-Man 2. So I mean, there's a lot. We got.
I'm actually, Paul.
Yes,
I was going to ask you. Did you see that the Volume 1 Nick Spencer Amazing Omnibus is coming out this year?
No, that's awesome.
How many volumes is there going to be?
Probably at least two. Probably, I bet you could fit 2 in there. Maybe 3 if you want to shorten it, like cut it. But again, we digress. We're
gonna get that. You gonna get it?
No. I have all the single issues. That's the one like main series.
You can't like yank them out very easily, right?
Yeah, you know me. Again, I don't want to get into it, but
they are heavy.
Yeah, they're not my thing. Yeah. But anyway, but really quickly, Nico, I'm thinking about having in a few weeks a Spider-Man Council episode. So
I'm already there.
All right. So I just want I gotta get you on. So I'm gonna have you on for that. So that's in a couple weeks. I think that'll be April 12th. That'll be when Spider-Man No Way Home comes out on 4K that day. So
we're there.
Plan this, please. Right.
What are you gonna talk about? What are you gonna talk about?
What do you think, moron? Come on. We're doing Spider-Man.
I know Spider-Man, but there are a lot of topics with Spider-Man.
So next week's different. That's a different. We'll talk. Yeah. But I don't think I even told you really what the next week is. You can have an idea.
I don't know.
The week after that,
anything, folks.
I don't. I'm really bad. So next week, so April 12th, Nico just confirmed he'll be on Spider-Man Council. It's going to be MCU Required Reading Spider-Man, but it's because Spider-Man Council with some hardcore Spider-Man people. I haven't asked everybody, but you're on there now. It's going to be about, judging from the comic books, where do they take the story for Spider-Man next?
Oh, and I'm already
all right. So it's no required reading, but we're gonna bring up the comics to justify where the story goes, and we're gonna do something for Batman eventually. Not for a while, but we're gonna do it for eventually as well, Chris. So don't worry. We got Batman will not be remiss.
So I'm not invited to the Spider-Man.
Oh no, you're on Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
Oh, of course.
I never get to talk about Spider-Man.
I know you're on the show with me. Don't worry. You're permanent with me. It's me and you together. You know this. Anyway, we're going way too long. All right. And last thing, next week's episode is going to be a fun one. And Chris already told you what it was, but you forgot. It's going to be. I haven't told you. I haven't confirmed the date. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles original Eastman and Laird run.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. So that's going to be next Tuesday, and that's going to be part of our comic book masterpiece episode playlist. So that's the title for next week. I'm pretty sure I have Tim Grassi on. Hopefully, I'll have Katie Sullivan coming on. So Katie, I need to have more ladies on here, more beautiful, beautiful ladies like her on. I'm trying to get more, diversity on there for that because, I haven't had very many women on here. That's embarrassing for me. So anyway, I'm excited because Katie's awesome. I love Katie. She's coming on. So yeah, hopefully she can make it. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but she hopefully will be coming on. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's cool.
Comic book masterpiece, episode 2. Nico, we'll wrap this up. Where can people find your stuff at, my friend?
Yes, sir. You can follow me right here on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. I'm someone who loves to talk. That's how I got to meet all of these people. So if you DM me, if you tweet at me, if you send me a funny TikTok, I'll respond you. I do film reviews on TikTok as well. If you're interested in that, I'm going to be doing one about the weirdness that was the Oscars. I'm going to actually try to talk about the winners instead of the slap, so which not many people are doing, so come find me. And then please follow the Vigilante 1939, a show I do with Zeddy, who commented below, and my father as well. Very lucky that we were able to do the show. And then I do a Spider-Man show with my dad and a good friend of the show, Mr. Peter Vera from Straight Outta Gotham, and Batman on Film as well. And it's the Italian Spider-Man Coalition. We're three Goombas, we're three Paisans talking some Spidey and some sauce. So we always try to work some family food stuff in there. So if you like Italian food, come listen. If you like Spider-Man, come listen. If you like both, that's a match made in heaven. So
Pete's been very critical of the recent issues of Spider-Man, and I needed to get. I want him. Don't tell me what it is. I want to listen to the podcast. I'm curious what you guys think. So, Chris, Chris, you did by the way, and this is going to be from now on. I'm going to command this. I'm going to ask one thing of you. Okay, going forward, I don't want any guff from you. All right, going forward. Your title will be changed, okay? When you log into StreamYard, from now on, starting next week, you will be titled The Reverend. All right? And I'm not joking either. I will be mad. I will throw a fit if you don't change that to The Reverend.
Well, you're going to write that into my comic.
I don't think I can. I can't, but I want you to put it in. So next week, you're The Reverend. And I don't care. You're going to do it. Because
I'm not going to be the Reverend for TMNT, though, man.
No, you are. Because I'll say you're the Reverend, and I'll say the Batman Reverend. Anyway, so I'll always preface it. Don't worry. So, Chris, you did a Substack for your the Batman review. You had some great clips, which I'm hoping he volunteered his time to clip out for us, because you do some amazing you go off and you preach the world of Batman, and it's incredible. That's why I'm calling you the Reverend from now on. So you had just recently put a Substack review of the Batman, and so tell people about that. Where can they find your stuff at?
Yeah, sure. chriscloud.substack.com. It's like a podcast that if I have something to say about something that doesn't necessarily fit into a box, because I've got this outlet through you, thankfully. I've got Discovery Debrief, which is a Star Trek podcast that I'm a part of. I've got Comics on Consoles, which is video games related to comics characters, and that's a passion project. But like most people, I have an abundance of interests. So I decided to start a Substack podcast just called Building a Better Nerd, because I like to think that that's what I do, is I go as deep as I can. When I find out that I like something, I go all in, and I try to do the homework so that I know what I'm talking about. So that's what chriscloud.substack.com is. It's Building a Better Nerd. My first episode was a review of the Uncharted film. I love those games, so seeing the movie brought up a lot of specific feelings in me, and that's also where I deposited my 3,600 word 27-minute podcast review of the Batman, and a lot of strong feelings about that. My favorite character in fiction, as I've said many times before, and I had a lot of strong feelings about that movie, and they were all pretty much excellent.
Yes.
So,
Amen.
Yes.
Yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. And I'm probably going to try and do other random stuff, like a review of Halo Infinite, even though that game's 3 months old now. And maybe even a review of WWE 2K22.
Wow, you are that
corporate wrestling fan tends to show up when the new video games do. So, and rest in peace, Razor Ramon.
Yeah, Razor Ramon, rest in peace. Anyway, yeah, Chris, well, thank you for all. I mean, you're part of this. You're a permanent.
I appreciate the fact that you put up with me. So.
You're ridiculous. You put up with me, sir. Anyway, everyone, follow, like. I should have said at the beginning. I don't, because I suck and I don't really care. So, but I only care because I want people to read more comics, and get into this stuff. So please comment, like, do all that stuff. You made it this far. You probably didn't, but you know what? If you did, I love you. And Chris, why don't you take us out, my friend?
Read more comics.
Yes. Good night. Goodbye.